Is that not discriminatory? Is the whole income tax system then not discriminatory? So the question, how can both of these exist in the same world? If the income tax was as certain as death, they can't. Okay? But, do you think he has the right to equality? They don't. This becomes, in one essence, how simple it is. The conflicts that are created, even in the operation or just at an innocent perception level, if the Income Tax Act was as certain as death and directly applied to a natural person, are just so numerous. You know, I've picked this one because it was, a very obvious one. For no other reason than the amount of money you made dictates which level of income tax you pay. And that cannot exist in harmony with 15.1, where it says every natural person is equal before and in the law without discrimination if the Income Tax Act directly applied to the natural person. It's really about that simple, because both of those cannot exist in the same time and space. There's a conflict there. Okay? So it raises the question, is this income tax system fraud or is it free will? Okay, I mean, if you venture down through the internet, you'll see a lot of theories out there. It's unconstitutional, it's illegal. I'll be honest with you, based on our research, it is legal, it is constitutional, because of the structure. Have they violated any of your rights? Absolutely not. Do these guys have the rights you have? Absolutely not. You can discriminate against them all you want. And you can even put out policies, say we're going to all treat you guys all the same. But those policies that they put out on the back of your tax forms have absolutely no force or effect in law. They're just nice ideas and good sound bites to keep us all happy. Okay? So, is it fraud or free will? It is free will. Because of who we are in this legal system, we are the ones that allow the legal system to function. Okay? Because of who we are and the rights that we have, one of those rights, it's one that you can't even give away. It's the one right that you use to actually either create a life of economic servitude or a life of economic freedom. It's your right of free will. And so when we use that right, or have that right used against us is probably a better way, without our awareness of it, where do we fall in? How is it recognized in the Charter? And that's where section 15.2 of the Charter comes in. It goes, subsection 1, which was the equality rights of a natural person, does not preclude any law, program, or activity that has as its object the amelioration of conditions of the disadvantaged individuals, okay, or groups, including those that are disadvantaged because of race, national, etc., etc. So disadvantaged individuals is very broad, because they just gave you some qualifiers near the end. So what's the level of disadvantage? Okay? Here's this legal maxim that just says it all. Juris ignorante est cum jus nostrum ignoramus. It is ignorance of the law when we do not know our own rights. If we had no idea who we were in this legal system, and we went through and did everything they told us, which they're telling you to represent these guys so they can take these guys as property, is it really their fault? Because if, instead of acting in the capacity of a legal representative and holding a business or earning money for him, if we just acted in our own capacity, which is recognized and protected in law, which no statute can actually infringe on those rights, if we went and did all that there, would that not had the knowledge of that, then it becomes a decision. Then we say, for the benefit, then we can look at this and say, I like the benefit or I don't. Okay? So, that is why really in one essence Paradigm grew up focusing about human rights. It's not about income tax, because your human rights deals on all spectrums of your life. Literally, so many we can't even one area of focus of study we have is relative to income tax. Why? Primarily because that's the one that is hurting the majority of the people. That is the one that years ago it never even existed in this country. And then over a period of time it's now used as a weapon to destroy families. Okay, and so that's really where a lot of our focus. So when we look at it, it really shows us that if we're not willing to spend the time to learn who we are and the rights that we have, we fall into this category of a disadvantaged individual. Not knowing who you are, is that not probably or the rights that you have, is that not probably the most disadvantaged position to be in? Okay? So again, it's not a fraud. The income tax system is legal, it's constitutional, I don't want to say it's a brilliant game, it's a brilliantly deceptive structured, legal structure. And until we become aware of who we are, we will by default not only fall into this benefit program, is really what it is, it's the result of a benefit program, but every other benefit program the government throws in front of us and tell us that we have to do it. let's look at it this way. When the government says, yes, a person must obey that law. And if all you ever knew that there was you never knew there was a duality of person, you also would never know to ask which person. So did the government lie, or were they just referring to the artificial person who had no natural rights? Okay? It's not what they say in one essence, it's what they're not saying. And it's our responsibility to learn it ourselves. And they go, hey, if you're not willing to get yourself educated, don't worry, we'll take care of you. But there's no for you. Okay? So, now again, I keep telling them there's a benefit in here somewhere. There always is. There always has to be, because you cannot have this trust relationship without one party receiving a benefit. So, there is a benefit, but it's a benefit for whom? Okay? And what is this benefit? The benefit for income tax is the Canada Pension Plan. And as we progress, you'll see where this falls into our history in a really peculiar point in time. Okay? When we go into the Canada Pension Plan Act, let's look at who it applies to. Okay? Now, if the government says every employee has to pay in a Canada Pension Plan, have we ever thought to ask, what's the definition of employee? Because maybe you're not that. Here it is. Employee includes an officer. You weren't born an officer. Did you swear an oath to hold an office? Okay? Let's look at the definition of an employer. They tell the people, all employers must pay their share of the CPP. They're hitting both the employees and the employers with the same benefit program. Okay? It means a person that's liable to pay salary, wages, or other remunerations for services performed in employment. And, which is a compound sentence, which means, and in relation to an officer, includes the person from whom the officer receives his remuneration. So if you went out there as a natural person, engaged under a private contract with anyone else, be it an corporation or a natural person, is there an officer in this relationship? Therefore, is CPP required according to the law? But what's synonymous with taxpayer actually is officer. The taxpayer is an officer. There's synonyms in law, and it takes too long to get down to show the deeper connection. But the Canada Pension Plan is only applicable to these officers they created. And therefore, they get you to act as a legal representative of it. Okay? Here's one way of really showing this that CPP is the empirical connective benefit. When we look at the difference between self-employed and employees. Now, employees, when they get a paycheck, what's deducted off there? CPP, EI, and anything else the government can think of. Okay, but those are the two main ones. When a self-employed person fills out a business and expense statement or their T1, what is the only benefit? Do they have to pay into EI as self-employed? No. What is the only benefit they have to pay into according to the law? CPP. It is the connector that allows this trust relationship to exist. Okay? And it goes on here too. The employment means the performance of services under an expressed or implied contract of service, apprentice, and includes the tenure of an office. So the officer holds an office, and here's more of a different visual that what income tax is an internal federal tax inside the federal jurisdiction. Internal federal excise tax, actually. Now, because of the government's constitutional limitations, guess what they don't have jurisdiction over? Employment. They can't attach statutory conditions to employment contracts. Is not having 29, 30, 50% of your paycheck deducted a condition attached to your employment contract? So they couldn't do it out here. They actually went to the Supreme Court in 1936, and they tried to introduce the Unemployment and Social Insurance Act. And that's really what the Supreme Court says. You can't. You know, the federal government's has a lot of authority to do certain things, but it's restricted in the sense that it's expansive, but it's restrictive within their jurisdiction. And the one area they have zero jurisdiction over is employment. That falls under provincial jurisdiction. And that's self-evident when we look at, where's the Employment Standard Act, Labor Relations Code? All of those are what? Provincial statutes. So what the federal government had to do was create this elaborate thing, is create an entity called an officer inside, create another entity called a legal representative. Let's try switching this. Called the legal representative, and then through mass media and propaganda and manipulation of language, convince you as a natural person that you were him and you're working for him. Now you go around the rest of your life complaining that they're taking your property. Yet it's not.